The caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. By design and display structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens. And by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. And additionally, in association with Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. So, crunch point in the championship now with just 2 meetings left to go. This is the penultimate rounds of the Season 5 caterhamracer.com Esports Championships here at the virtual representation of the magnificent Croft circuit in North Yorkshire. One of my favourites. It's fast, it's flat, and it always provides plenty of overtaking opportunities and slipstreaming chances, which will mean there'll be plenty of passing, hopefully, and lots of action towards the front in an evening which doesn't contain either of the main championship contenders. We could almost certainly see a brand new winner in store. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson back in the commentary box once again. Of course, we're gearing up not just for this tonight's esports virtual Caterham racing, but of course this weekend it is Caterham Motorsport back in action as well. We can quickly give you where we are in terms of the calendar at this point in time in the season. So we've already been to Donington so far, Knock Hill in Scotland. Then we had the Caterham 420Rs last time out in the last 2 meetings at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and then last time at Brands Hatch Indy. And there are still actually a couple more to go. We've got Croft, and then, forgive me, there's 2 more meetings after this one. We've got the Cessna 300 rounds, and then Cadwell Park for the 420Rs will decide the fate of the title as well. Chris, this is getting to a key point in the championship now, as we mentioned, into the second half. Some quite challenging circuits with a variety of different traits in them. Croft and Stetson, lots of long straights. Cadwell Park, tight, twisty, very difficult to overtake. BRSCC had a meeting just gone this past weekend as well, which saw some excellent racing on a circuit where it's very difficult to pass. I imagine, though, at this kind of circuit, with the long straights and wide nature of this place, particularly with having a lack of elevation changes, I think this possibly could be one of the easier places for cars to pass, particularly down these 2 long straights.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. There are certainly some overtaking opportunities around this track. We have the tightest hairpin in British motorsport, I believe, at this track. So there's certainly opportunities there, although they're generally quite scrambly and messy. But there, yeah, into Tower, we have an opportunity to go past as well. So, yeah, certainly not one of the hardest places to overtake at, but equally, because of that, we do tend to see moves that last several corners or even several laps, where one person gets the better in one corner, but then that leads to or drops them their speed for the second part. But it's always nice to get up to Croft, and like you say, we're headed up there for real next time out. Actually, the 7 Series that I'm in isn't actually at Croft. However, all the other championship series are, and I know that whilst for some people it's a fair drive, it's a brilliant little track, especially for a Caterham.
Yeah, we should remind those who are following the Caterham Motorsport action that the Caterham 7 Championship UK is not present this weekend, but it is actually out next weekend on a very special occasion, where it once again joins up with the British GT Championship on their support package at Alton Park on September 11th and 12th, as does another BRACC series, that being the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford Championship, which I've always likened Caterham as being the Formula Ford of sports cars. There are quite a few similarities between the 2 formulas, and certainly a car which will teach you quite a lot in terms of car control and racecraft as well. But before we have a look at some of our runners and riders tonight, including some of our new drivers that are here for the first time in this particular grid, on a bumper sort of 23-car grid that we have this evening, let's just do a quick run through of where we are championship-wise, and to give you the rundown of exactly what's happening. Now, the key thing to point out here is David Rowe, Christian Zaruta and Steve McMaster, for a variety of different reasons each, are not here tonight. So the highest placed championship contender who is here tonight is Tom McEwing in 4th place. Now, if you look at where he is, of course, on overall points, that's where he sits. But then if you look at drop scores, it makes it a bit more interesting, because if you look at the points of the small numbers on the right-hand side, you'll see Christian Zaruta is basically in front by 5 points. Then as Steve McMaster, who's not here either, he's a few further points back as well. But the key movers are certainly going to be Tom McEwing, Andy Parker, and of course the likes of John Lang and Steve Arnell, who are all here tonight. And they're going to be picking up, Chris, crucial points, particularly if things don't go well for the top 3 in the last couple of beaters. I can't foresee that it won't, but then again, we've had some very strange and random things happen in this championship so far, including opportunities for drivers that we wouldn't have normally seen getting up towards the front. So quite literally, as Murray Walker used to say, anything can happen in motorsport in this occasion and in sim racing, and quite frankly, as we've seen so far, even several times this year, it often usually does.
So yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it makes it interesting on those drop scores, and effectively by missing a race weekend, just like in real life, that's why we allow drop scores. Because real life gets in the way of motorsport sometimes. So we allow drop scores so that if there's anything important you have to go and do, you can go and do that without affecting your championship. But what it means is they have no scope for any more issues. They are using this missed round as their 2 drop scores for the championship. So it kind of cuts everything to the bone and actually makes everything a little bit more sketchy, I think is the right word, going into the final 2 rounds of the season. And Snetterton and Cadwell especially are not unknown to have issues around those 2 tracks.
Yeah, they put themselves into a situation, as many drivers find themselves, not just in sim but in real life as well, for championships that do include drop scores, where if you have to either sacrifice 2 races, or if you have, let's say, 2 DNFs, so you miss rounds for whatever reason, the positive of that is that you can use them as your drop scores. But then the negative to that is you have to make every single result from there on count, and every single point has to count, and it has to be the best finish that you can get. Otherwise, any points that you drop are going to have an immediate effect on what could potentially be a title challenge, or dropping back too far to put yourself out of contention in the closing stages. So this will be crucial to see what happens when David, Christian and Steve all come back. David's had to go up to Croft a day early. Christian's on a holiday, and as for Steve McMaster, he's recovering from recently competing in this past weekend's Citroen 2CV 24 Hours. So for a variety of different reasons each, they're all having to take a very brief sabbatical from the championship, as in missing this round. What it does mean, though, Chris, is it means it opens up the opportunity for a potentially brand new winner, someone that we either haven't had win very often or haven't even had win at all. And looking at the times at the moment in the qualifying session here, with about roughly 4.5 minutes to go, there's a good chance we could get the likes of Andy Parker, Richard Gallagher, Guy Crawford, Tom McKeown and John Lang, and even Freddie Chiddicks, who's a front runner currently in this year's Caterham Academy. All of them have realistic chances of getting themselves on the top step of the podium, providing their pace and their fortunes go in their favour.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly you've got to make hay while the sun shines, haven't you? And while they're the top 3 are away, it opens up 3 more potential spots in the 6 podiums we've got this evening, and therefore the big points playing positions. As we see Matt Larby there going very wide. So Matthew is one of our new drivers tonight. He is entered into the 2022 Academy. So he is using some caterhamracer.com as a sort of training ground, a little bit of practice, and he's certainly been speeding along quite nicely. So it's good to see him out on the track. And with 3.5 minutes to go, we've got Andrew Parker out front on a 38.8, and that matches very closely with the kind of pre-qualifying time. So he's certainly maximised. But again, you can see that there's tight times at the top here, with Richard Gallagher only 8/10 of a second behind, 8/100 of a second behind, and then Guy Crawford only a 10th back. So yeah, really tight times at the top, as you might expect, and looking like we're going to have some interesting races.
And just for those who are watching so far this season, have twigged that we've got some new names, Chris, you know them better off the bat. So for those who are wanting to find a bit more about some of our new drivers, Matthew being one of them, for the rest of the new drivers, talk us through who we've got that's an addition to the grid tonight alongside some of our regulars. So
Faris Babsil is new to the grid. He's joined us, gone through the VARDS process. In fact, everyone who you see on this grid tonight has been through our kind of online testing process to make sure that you can control the car and you're not going to just go and ram everyone out the way. And he's actually a Middle East driver, so we're actually spreading around the world. We've got a few names that you would have raced with us, but they've mainly been on the B grid, therefore they haven't been onto the A grid. So people like Adam Whitehouse and so Jim Earlham has been on the A grid, but he is quite often a B grid driver, but it's nice to see him up here again. And then Anthony Hambleton is someone who's been racing all season on the B grid, but it's great to have him. He's actually in the pits right now, but great to have him out on the track showing his stuff onto the A grid. But yeah, it's a few other names that actually we've been getting on board with the service, but they weren't able to make it tonight. But it's always nice to see new drivers, and if anyone does fancy coming along, visit caterhamracer.com, and with full information there on how do you get involved and how do you get yourself onto this grid.
So speaking of the grid, 1 minute and 45 seconds left on the clock. Freddie Chiddicks has just popped up into 6th fastest, but he's about 4/10 off. Pace is currently set by some of the top 5, and that's not going to help him. Clouting the tyres on the inside though, which is quite a solid object. It's not quite so solid in real life, but in the sim, it's quite a solid kind of static object. Which, if you hit that, there is some light damage on these cars that it's on, but of course, if you whack the car too hard, you might be taking too many liberties. So we can wait and see how that plays out, particularly with some overtaking opportunities later on as the 2 races can play out. We're looking at Tom McEwing here, one of next year's Academy races, and he currently sits, as we say, as the highest placed championship contender here tonight, because we haven't got the top 3 for reasons that we've already explained. So Tom is going to try to look to take full advantage of the fact that the top 3 are gone. And that is going to be crucial, as you said, talk about drop scores. Tom will want to use tonight as not just a confidence boost, but to claw as many points as he can to try and make himself an inadvertent contender between these 3 cars in front of him in the points. But if you can get a solid night tonight and bag those solid points, who knows, in the last couple of meetings, he could put himself amongst them, because he has been pretty quick in the last few meetings, particularly in the last couple of rounds that we've had. Made some strong gains, particularly in the 420Rs. We're back in the Academy cars now. So who knows, if Tom can keep this decent form up, he could well spring a surprise and put himself right amongst the top 3 when we get the last couple of rounds coming up with Sneston and then Campbell. It really could happen.
Absolutely, and interestingly, so Guy Crawford and Tom McEwing have been probably the most consistent. While we've seen Andrew Parker and Richard Gallagher sitting out front of the grid quite regularly, what we have also seen is that they have suffered from a few mistakes and issues. Now, whether having a little bit more free track in front of him, Andrew will be able to make a little break. It doesn't look like it, given by the times that we're seeing on the grid as we're starting to get the last laps coming in for qualifying. But yeah, I would say that Tom McEwing is actually in a good position along with Guy there to maybe make that podium and therefore, yeah, like you say, maximise his points.
So the timer has hit 0, so Tom will have to start from 4th on the grid. But the man that has taken pole position is Andy Parker, who we've talked about so many times and so many occasions, Chris, the fact that he's been in a position to get a strong result and he's just about missed out because of bad luck or a little bit of careless driving. Tonight has to be a night for Andrew where essentially there are no excuses. He's out there, he's got provisional pole position at the moment. The last couple of cars are coming through to finish their lap times, including Guy Crawford and John Lang, I believe, are both on the screen right now. If he can't get it done tonight, particularly with the 3 main championship contenders are out there, then he's going to have to go away and do some more training with Darren, Burke and co. Get himself up there, because surely this is genuinely his absolute best chance to win a race here outright, rather than just benefiting from mishaps and cars around him. He's got the outright pace. He just has to string it all together to finally make it happen. He can do it, but will he do it, Chris? That's the big question.
That is exactly the question, and it's one that we will be seeing what's going to happen sort of for the rest of this evening. But certainly we know that he's got the pace, as you say. It's just about that consistency of lappery, and we've seen that in free air he's been really good, and even in recent races we've even seen that really consistent moving through the pack and just getting caught up with unfortunate events, but it's good for him to see whether he could do it. We've put the pressure on in the commentary box now, but equally Richard Gallagher's been very similar. So qualifying's over, so let's run through the results.
So this is how the grid will sit for the first of our 2 15-minute races tonight here on the Croft circuit in North Yorkshire. Andy Parker with his best chance yet to take his first proper outright win. He will start from pole position, but only by the slender margin of 21 thousandths of a second from Richard Gallagher on the front row alongside him. Then it's Guy Crawford and Tom McEwing who comes next. Tom McEwing again, someone who has to take full advantage of the top 3 not being here to claw as many points as he can back to put himself right into potential contention for an outside shot at the title if he can get the right results tonight. John Lang and Steve Arnell make up the 3rd row of the grid. Current Academy frontrunner in real life Freddie Chiddicks will start 7th alongside Paul Fernerhuff. Then it's Alan Curtis and Ryan Hooker who round out the top 10 for this first race. 11th is Jason Knight alongside Ben Maskell. Then we get through to some of our newer drivers. Adam Whitehouse is alongside regular Jamie Peters-Ennis, who he might be a bit disappointed with 14th, but he'll try and make his way through from mid-pack. Keith Dalton, who was out racing this previous weekend in the Mazda MX-5 Clubman Championship, now switches to a Caterham in the virtual world for 15th place. Hudson Knight, who is Jason Knight's son, who will start 16th. Michael Coomber and Faris Babsar, another one of our new drivers, back in 18th, as is also a couple more rookies in Matthew Larby and Chris Burr. They will start in the 10th row of the grid to round out the top 20. And then just at the end of the group, we've got Graham Hopkins, Anthony Humbleton, and Neil Pardo, with Jim Elam and Paul Donkin, who are hoping going to be joining us, but it will be a 23-car grid that will take the start at least for this first race. And hopefully, if Jim and Paul can be around, it might well be 25 cars, with those two starting from the back in the second race. So cars are already forming up onto the grid. It's quite a long run down towards turn one, and it's quite a compacted sequence of corners. It's got a tight but fast first corner at Clairvaux, and then you've got quite a lot of runoff area where there's the static tyres around the gravel, and then you've got Hawthorns that opens out into this very tight, narrow chicane, which I suspect, Chris, is probably going to catch a lot of drivers out, particularly if they feel in the opening few seconds of this race they want to go 2, dare I say, even 3 wide through the first couple of corners, because they're going to have to filter through as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the end result probably doesn't bear thinking about.
Yeah, it's not going to work through that chicane. It's a single file affair. Even if you try and go too wide into there, it always causes problems. And as we saw earlier, ably demonstrated by Freddie Chiddicks, these tyre walls do not move. I mean, in real life, they will take a wheel off, and we've seen that many a time. So in this virtual world, it could cause all sorts of problems for drivers following if that happens. So they're going to have to cut it fine, but obviously they've got to leave themselves a margin. I have, of course, left them with some good instructions about how to deal with the fact that there's so many people on this grid, but as the lights come up, we'll see whether they're going to obey any of that.
So, Andrew Parker and Richard Gallagher on the front row of the grid, looking for their first proper race win in one of these championships. Can they do it, or somebody else manage to steal their thunder in 15 minutes' time? The red lights are up for the first race tonight at Croft. We're underway and racing in virtual North Yorkshire as the 23-strong field charges its way down the pit straight towards Clairvaux for the first time. It's side by side for the lead. Richard Gallagher has the outside line running into Clairvaux, looks round the outside of Andy Parker and goes for it, and does in fact take the lead. So Gallagher leads it then. It's Parker's second, McEwen's up to third, Crawford's down to fourth, then Lang, Arnell, Fernihoff, Freddie Chiddicks is down to ninth after he's qualified in 8th position. They all filter through one at a time. There's a crash in the background. I think possibly Jason Knight's involved in that, possibly Keith Dalton as well, and also Babsell too, back in 21st position. But they head down towards the right-hander at Tower off the back straight. Lock up on the inside. Front is 3 abreast behind because Steve Arnell sticks his nose up the inside of John Lang, and they're all trying to get past, looks like Guy Crawford at this point as they head up towards the Jim Clark S's. This is incredibly fast and threading past the circuit. Flat out left and then right. Use all the runoff on the exit if you need to, and then sprint down towards the very tricky complex of the right-hander at Barcroft, and then it's Sunny in and Sunny out. So the first right-hander is in and then out for the second part. One car's running wide in the background.
Like
Chiddicks.
Yeah, look like Chiddicks running in the wide in the background. As he said, Sunny in, Sunny out. We try and make them into one corner. We see Andrew Parker now piling into the complex, which is just before the series of 2 hairpins that we've got to the tail end of this lap, which really spice things up. It's normally single file, but obviously when you're running this close in the corners of that strike, you always want to have a little stab up the inside, especially as you get further down into the pack. We've got another spinner in the background. Looks like Chris Burr's made a spin, and he's dropping down the field as between the two things as we complete lap 1.
Whitehouse also losing a place to Mascot for 12th position. At the end of lap 1, Parker's got the lead back again for Gallagher, so Gallagher's advantage didn't last that long. There's lots of battling going on side by side behind. Let's go further down in the top 10, and that's Paul Ferderhoff scrapping with Ryan Hooker, and I think Ryan won't appreciate being squeezed onto the grass that readily by Paul Ferderhoff, but he'll try and get him back if he can as they run through the right-hander. 9th place is Curtis. Jamie Peters in the white Caterham there is into the top 10 already. That's the first lap. He's starting 14th. He's up 4 places already. He's battling away with the recovering Freddie Chiddicks after he made his mistake into Sunny in. And now the second time they come down the back straight towards Tower, and Chiddicks is moving out to the inside line to have a look up the inside. Meanwhile, Hooker tries to repay the favour of Fernerhuff. Runs too deep, outbrakes himself, and sliding back up the inside goes Fernerhuff back into P7, so they're exactly where they started. Curtis is 9th, Chiddicks 10th. JP Zennis has lost out to that position. He's down into 11th. Leaders swing their way through the Jim Clark S's for the second time, and it really is proper side-by-side stuff as they come towards Barcroft with very fast, flat-out right-hander. You have to get your braking absolutely right to the straight line to then get the right possible line and momentum all the way through the 2 sunny corners.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant battling going on here, Scott. We saw Ryan Hooker there side by side, still with Paul Fernioff. We didn't see how that an incident through the sort of start-finish straight happened, but equally we saw Alan Curtis have an absolutely opportunistic moment as Ryan was pushed a little bit wide. Alan Curtis just shoved himself down the inside. You can see out front that the racers are still absolutely going head to foot, but you can see, you know, the battles are happening all down the field as we love and expect to see nowadays.
So lead gap at the front as we continue to watch these guys here at the head of the field. It's only about 0.3 of a second. And remember, in a set of course, the magic gap that you want to get in the slipstream is within half a second. And you can see visibly that Gallagher is well within that. He's about 0.2 of a second. He tries to sneak up the inside, gets the better run through Hawthorns. He can go side by side, but we don't advise it. And they've just about got out of that unscathed. Rick Gallagher just backed out at the last minute, but the momentum he's carried off the chicane has given him a really good chance to get up the inside for Tower. All Parker can do now, he's helpless. He has to take the race line on the outside. Watch for Tom McEwing in third position. They turn in through the right-hander at Tower, and somehow Parker comes out of that in front for the moment. Now here comes Gallagher with a better exit. McEwing's trying to go with him. Also now in that lead group has come Guy Crawford in the orange car, and it's the purple and blue machine and John Lang to make it a top 5. These are arguably, quite frankly, the 5 strongest cars in the field, and they're all going ahead of the field for the front, as I probably anticipated. McEwing has a look for third place, but so far it seems Andy Parker is currently resisting the pressure, but boy, he's got a lot of it to deal with for the next 10.5 minutes, Chris.
Yeah, I don't think we can cope, let alone him. They're taking chunks out of each other. We've got the first sort of semblance of a gap there, but I think Andrew had an advantage where Gallagher still had to keep protecting from behind. So into Tower, even though Parker never made the apex, he still kept the position because I think Gallagher was keeping one eye on his mirror there, making sure he protects his second place. Whether this gap will continue to open, it's a nice little slide on the brakes there by Parker and an exit slide as well. So probably not the quickest way to go through there, but nevertheless, if you can keep it on the track, I think you'll be all right at the moment.
So lap in the books, just under 10 minutes to go. We've already had a third of this race gone, which is pretty incredible considering how big this circuit is. Lap times 1 minute 39s, 1 minute 40s at the front. Freddie Chiddick has set the fastest lap of the race. He's got quite a bit of a gap to make up. He's going to have to try and go with Arnell and Fernerhuff to try and catch up to these guys and to take advantage of the fact that they're battling so hard. There's Jamie Peter-Zennis in 10th position. He's now got quite a gaggle of cars behind him. He's got Curtis, Maskell, Larby and Hudson Knight all behind him. To scrap over 10th to 14th position, so everyone's sort of grouping off into little battle packs here. Running wide there was Maskell, Curtis to try and pick up 10th position. Everywhere you look at this point in time, there are little battle packs of 2 and 3 or more cars, and that's some of them a little bit larger, about 5 or 6 towards the front. There's lots of scrapping, and this is the great thing about any championship, particularly with this one as well, Chris. It doesn't matter where you are, towards the front, in the middle, or towards the back. Genuinely, you've always got someone to race with, particularly in a grid this big we've got tonight. Yeah,
as I pick out Steve Arnell, who seems to be the only person who's going around solo at the moment. We saw him sort of competing early doors with that 3-wide move into Tower, but he's dropped off the back of John Lang, so whether he's had an off-track moment, what we are seeing is Freddie Chiddick's coming back through strongly after his early incident where he spun out down at the complex. He's now back with Paul Ferneyhoff, and looks like he's going side by side into the complex. So he's got the inside line now coming into this right-hander, so he should have that done, although Paul's very late on the brakes, but he does indeed get that done and sticks his car back up now into 7th place. So, as Paul Ferneyhoff, another good look up the inside there. Again, an opportunistic move, so good respectful driving by everyone on the server tonight.
Gaps are staying relatively static at the moment. New fastest lap of the race for Richard Gallagher. So the top 2 trying to break away now from McEwing and Crawford, with John Lang there in 5th position, just holding on as they turn in through Hawthorns now for another lap. 8 minutes to go left in this race. 6th position now for Steve Arnell with Ferneyhoff, Chiddick, Hooker and Curtis. The positions change in real time, so anytime there is 2 car position drivers swapping around on the timing tower left-hand side, that's a pass as it happens. So keep an eye out for that if there's any changes. As an example, Whitehouse gets past Burke. Burke's dropped a couple of spots back, so he's right in the pack with a few other cars. And some of our newbies, Babsale and Hamilton and Burr, and they're having a great scrap towards the second half of the field. But it seems as though at the moment, both Parker and Gallagher have got this initial advantage. They've pulled away and broken away the toe from Tom McEwen and Guy Crawford as we go on board with Freddie Chiddick, who in the real Caterham world will be racing this weekend to try and maintain his leading advantage in his respective group in the Caterham Academy. Certainly using this as plenty of practice for tonight, holding off this man, Paul Ferneyhoff, trying to chase him down in 8th position, but also has Ryan Hooker behind for attention, which means he's in a bit of a catch-22 situation, having to try and attack and defend at the same time. And as you well know, Chris, from your experience, that is never easy in Caterham racing.
It's one of the hardest lessons to learn, is to how do you maintain your pace while trying to battle and defend. It's certainly, like you say, an uncomfortable position, and you have to make your moves stick. And Ryan's there looking at Paul. They've been having a race-long battle, so these two are absolutely destined to be on the same bit of track. And Ryan makes a dive up the inside there. It's a great move if he can get it stopped, but he couldn't quite get it to stop, as he still made it. That was certainly a typical move we do see in that hairpin in real life. Often goes up to the stewards to have a query over it, but there you go. As Ryan is now ahead, and I think Ryan did have some extra speed there and was trying to look how he could get past Paul, and he's certainly done that now. Whether Paul agrees with the method there, it's hard to say.
So into the second half of the race now, 6.25 minutes left on the clock, and that lead gap is still incredibly close between Parker and Gallagher, and Parker's doing well to resist the pressure. Also having to resist pressure here is Tom McEwing. He's got Guy Crawford to his outside, turning into Tower Bend, with John Lang watching on. Looks around the outside as best he can. There's no way to get through, although he's trying to draw himself alongside. If he can put himself level by the Jim Clark S's, it may well be that McEwing has to capitulate as they go through. That's a great aerial shot as they go side by side through the left and then the right. McEwing does back off a little bit as Crawford uses all the runoff area on the exit of the Jim Clark S's through Barcroft in front. And up to 3rd place goes Crawford at the expense of McEwing. So McEwing's going to try and fight back as best he can. But so far it looks as though, Chris, touch wood, with 5.5 minutes to go, Parker is resisting the pressure from Gallagher well enough to keep him at bay, even being that close. But there's still, as we say, 5.5 minutes to go, and it could all change in the drop of a hat, given how Andy Parker's bad luck's been in the past. You won't think we're reminding him of that, but if he can just hold on, that first victory is tantalisingly close. But it's never over until the checkered flag flies, and he will know that more than anyone else.
Yeah, don't forget what I said earlier, though. These two drivers that we've got out in front with a little gap are often the ones that end up having an incident or two. So both of them have had their own incidents, and looked like Richard was very thirsty for that extra place, for that first race win going into the complex that time. So he's not happy just sitting there. He does want to make that move. He's now got a little bit of a buffer behind him where there's a gap back to Guy Crawford and Tom McEwing. So he is feeling a little bit more comfortable, like he can put the pressure on, and certainly Andrew's not able to escape his clutches. And with these, as we see Tom McEwing lose it in the background. I don't know if he clipped the tyre wall, or but he's now spinning backwards. It's tough rejoin there. There is actually contact there between two cars coming back on the track. So he is now lost his position. I was just about to sort of sing their praise and say they're very consistent drivers, but I think he clipped that tyre wall and unfortunately had an incident.
I didn't quite catch who he clipped on the way as he was rejoining there. It looked like another black car possibly, which made me think it was potentially Freddie Chiddick's. But if it is Freddie, he's just lost the place from Ryan Hooker for 6th position. He's carrying on as normal. There he is in the black car going through the shot. So there's Steve Arnell in 5th position. There is Hooker. There's Chiddick's. And up in 8th place now, there is Ferner Huff and Curtis and Maskell rounding out the top 10. So they're going to change further back as well. Babsale and Larby, who are scrapped over 17th and 18th position. So Babsale ahead of Larby at this point in time in the mid-pack. Got 3.5 minutes to go in this first race. And so far, Parker and Gallagher are still pretty much almost joined at the hip here as they turn in through the hairpin. And Gallagher, I think, either just trying to work together with Gallagher a little bit, Parker a little bit here initially before we get to the closing stages in a few moments' time, or just biding his time and just keeping on the pressure, keeping it applied until the end, and then pouncing right at the last moment to try and deny Parker that first win of the season. Head into the right-hander at Clairvaux at the end of the straight. They clip the curve, a little tighter run there through from Gallagher as they head under brakes, braking a straight line when it opens out through Hawthorns. Then the run through the S's here gives them a great chance to possibly get a super exit and a super toe all the way down the back straight towards Tower. We're on board with Gallagher, and he just moves out initially to maybe get a bit of clear air. And again, so that's interesting. He's put himself alongside. He's got good momentum. He didn't necessarily use the toe. He's been mainly in clear air heading down towards Tower Bend. Looking for that switchback move. He can try and squeeze himself up the inside, which he's going to do. Parker's left the door wide open on the outside line. They're going to go side by side again through the Jim Clark S's. Is Parker going to capitulate? The answer is not quite. He tries to stick with him, but Gallagher does take the lead after he snatched it initially in the opening lap. But Parker will stick with him now with less than 2.5 minutes to go. And I suspect that Parker want to pick that lead back up very quickly. The question is, how is Gallagher going to act defensively now that he's the hunted rather than the hunter on this occasion?
Whilst also paying attention to Guy Crawford, who is slowly catching up in the background. But I was about to say that it's about recognising and using your advantage, or recognising the opportunity when it arrives, and he did a good job there. We saw it a couple of laps before where he did go side by side, couldn't quite make it stick, but he has made it stick this time. Andrew was making some really good defensive sort of positioning, as making sure he might get an opportunity to come back up the inside. Certainly they're going to go side by side gradually down the straight, but at the moment where we saw it was Parker in front before, now it's Gallagher, and it's the same situation. There's nothing between them. It's just who's going to have that opportunity to lead on that last lap.
This should be the last lap of the race then, because as they came across the line, lap time was at 1:39. It was 1:37 left on the clock as they came across the start of the final tour of the Croft circuits. This should be one more time and one more chance in this set of corners for Andrew Parker to try and retaliate. Nose to the tail through the S's, climbing over the curbs. Watch out for Crawford in third place closing in, but now down the back straight. Parker's chance to retaliate here. We're on board with Parker, darting this way and that in the slipstream. Will he go for a dive into Tower Bend and go up the inside line? He thinks about it, shows his nose, puts himself in the mirrors of Gallagher, but not quite going to make it through. Now here's when he lost the position before the Jim Clark S's. He can't quite go side by side. He's running out of time and options here to try and make this happen. Otherwise, Gallagher will be looking at his first win of the season. Through Jim Clark S's, tighter run through the second bar, and now down towards Barcroft. This has to be the best chance that Parker's got here, unless he tries to make a move into the complex. Will he go up the inside line into the first part of the Sunny complex through Sunny in? There's a lock-up as he clips the inside curb. Gallagher Crawford is still trying to close in here in these final few corners, but he might be too little too late, and Parker, who's going to make the move, has to do it now. Otherwise, he'll have to do it now, forever hold his peace. Into the complex for the final time. Will he try and get the undercut of the switchback? It could be a classic Caterham photo finish here. He's trying to set Gallagher up for a switchback move through the first part of the complex into the hairpin. Takes the wide approach, forcing Gallagher to try and park the car right on the apex. And as it head out to the final corner, foots the floor. Oh, we spoke too soon. The curse of Andy Parker's hit again. He's lost second. He might possibly lose third if he's not careful. John Lang will beat into the flag. Gallagher wins, Crawford second, and John Lang denies him a podium. Oh, Andy, not again. Once more, he's denied the victory. The curse of bad luck for Andy Parker strikes once more, and again he has to wait another race to pick up his first victory. Rest of the field comes through. Steve Arnell picks up fifth. Freddie Chinnix recovers from his mistake to take sixth place. Ryan Hooker seventh. Then Paul Fernerhuff, Alan Curtis, Ben Maskell, Hudson Knight rounding out the top 11. Jamie Peters-Ennis gets 12th from Babsal, Hopkins and Larby. Oh, all I can say is, Chris, is not again for Andy Parker. Every time he gets into a top position like this, either we curse it or he pushes it a little bit too hard. And unfortunately, what could have been potentially a strong podium finish, it just blows away in the wind and he has to settle for fourth. That is absolutely gut-wrenching.
Do you know what, though? He went for the win, didn't he? He really tried for it all out. He was in second place coming out that last corner. He tried absolutely everything. Didn't make it stick, but you can't blame him for trying, and that's certainly something that's I find quite admirable. And Lang will certainly be thanking him for his early Christmas presents there, I'm sure.
Well, either way, it's a present certainly for both the guys in second and third. But Richard Gallagher put in quite a fine effort all race long to not only just take the win, but to force Andy Parker to crack under the pressure of him trying to reclaim the place. And Gallagher, therefore, takes the victory in this first race here at Croft tonight in the caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship. Guy Crawford and John Lang, they get gifted, in some cases gifted second and third, but still excellent drives nonetheless. Let's take nothing away from that for them to pick up these podium spots. Andy Parker will be kicking himself for losing not just the lead, but then second place on the last corner. He has to reside for fourth, but he will still start from the second row to try and get a good getaway for race number 2. He will get redemption very, very shortly in a few minutes' time. Steve Arnell rounds out the top 5. Freddie Chinnix, as we mentioned, recovered well from that mistake up at the sunny corners early on to pick up 6th. Then it's Ryan Hooker, Paul Fernerhuff, Alan Curtis, and then Ben Maskell rounds out the top 10 after he put in one of his best drives so far this season. 11th place goes to Hudson Knight. He beats his dad Jason, who is a bit further down the order. Jamie Peters-Ennis was a bit up and down in the edge of the top 10 to 12th. It was Faris Babsal takes 13th on his main race debut, ahead of Graham Hopkins. Matthew Larby does well in the top 15. Adam Whitehouse comes next. Then Chris Burke, Anthony Hamilton, Jason Knight will be disappointed with 19th after his early mishaps. And then Neil Pardo rounds up the top 20 with Keith Dalton, Tom McEwing, who again will be another driver that will be so disappointed being that far down after he made the mistake at the S's. He will start in 21st. And then 22nd place, Michael Coombs the final finisher. And hopefully, if we do, we might have Jim Earlham and Paul Donkin for this race. So the cars will be making their way onto the grid very shortly. The countdown's going on before we get this race underway. And once this second race is ready to go, timer will reset. The wait time will carry on. But thoughts on that race, though, quickly, Chris. Richard Gallagher taking a much-deserved victory, fought hard with Andy. He was the one that kept his head whilst Andy sadly lost his at the final corner. Both exceptional drives in their own right, but Gallagher was the one that just kept his cool the better, and that's what helped him take the ultimate prize.
And I think that might be his debut victory on the service as well. So congratulations to Richard. Hopefully I haven't misspoken there, but he's been fighting at the lead for a while now, and so it's great to see him take that win, and I think thoroughly deserved. He was ahead coming out the final corner, and it was it was his race to protect at the end there, and he did a really good job of doing just that.
And let's talk about Guy Crawford and Tom Lang. Again, we talk about key points for them to start moving up in the championship. There's a big fight going on, essentially, for really sort of 4th down to 6th positions. They're very much ensconced in that. And that large haul of points of both will certainly give them lots of confidence and lots of ambition to try and keep getting strong results, particularly when Tom McEwing had a decent result in his hands, and then sadly at the S's just threw it all away with a very just silly mistake, trying to clip the tyres a bit too much. Yeah,
and we have got damage on the service, so that's probably why he dropped even further down. He had a little bit of following on action as well as he kind of was rejoining, or his car was moving slowly, should I say, at the edge of the track. There was just a bit of misjudgment as someone else came out of the chicane quite quickly. But yeah, congratulations to Crawford, again showing his consistency, mega consistency there, and Lang, who's always ready to pick up the pieces there, and has been again fighting around the edge of those podiums for a while now. We had that great battle further back with Arnell Chiddix, Hooker and Ferniehoff, and they all look ready to start that battle again. Arnell having a pretty lonely race, as we saw mostly through that the middle section of that, but he will be now looking to see whether he can get himself moving forward.
So, just as the race before the race gets underway, it'll be Gallagher and Crawford on the front row of the grid. If you're Andy Parker in this situation, Chris, you're starting 4th. Is your aim here to try and get the best start possible and to try and shoot the gap between these two front row men? Or are you going to sit there and try and take the toe and try and pick off the cars one by one? Do you go for the smash and not literally smash and grab early on with, or do you try and just pick them off a bit more strategically, try and get them to get towards
You've got to remain in the battle, and you've got to take it strategically, picking them off. There's a long race ahead of us.
We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out then. Parker will have to try and get his elbows out if he has to from the pressure behind. But here come the lights for the second race then. So Gallagher looking for 2 from 2. But his rivals will try and get him. It's not a good start for Crawford. He has to struggle away from the lights. A decent getaway from Andy Parker for the second row as they charge off towards Clairvaux for the first time. Gallagher has the lead. It's side by side for seconds. Around the outside looks Parker on Lang. Lang parks the car right on the apex of Clairvaux and holds on to second. So Parker's 3rd, Crawford's 4th. Arnell is in 5th position. A little bit of bumping and boring through as they try to muscle their way for racing room, but they're all trying to get through now line astern through the S's onto that back straight. Now already Gallagher's trying to check out here by almost a second at the front of the field, so a cracking few corners in the opening lap here already for Gallagher. But here comes Parker with a move he has to make early on down towards Tower Bend. Gallagher tries to make it, Crawford tries to make it 3 abreast into the right-hander, but Lang's going to hold on for the moment, and Parker knows in this point, Chris, in this early lap, he has to get past Lang straight away, otherwise his chance of getting a victory this time are going to be blowing away in the wind, as will Gallagher as he sails up the road, already 1.2 seconds to the good.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'd had more chance before the lights came up, I would have said that you've got to stay involved, and now that, whilst yes, you've still got a long race ahead of you, you don't want that gap to get any bigger, especially with the speeds being this high. Andrew's definitely got the space to catch back up. He's just got to be freed from John, but his job is now to keep Andrew behind him. With Guy and Steve Arnell, they're looking really thirsty again for all these places in front of them.
I also watched for Freddie Chiddicks as well. He's had a decent start into 6th. And one driver you already have to watch. Well, I say that, and he runs quite wide. Another curse to the commentator. One person I think we have to watch out for, who's already had a cracking start from the back of the grid, essentially, is Tom McEwen. He's up to 12th place already. There he is, battling with Alan Curtis to come onto the pit straight for the end of the first lap. An amazing effort, picking off pretty much half the field already into P12, looking at now down the outside of Curtis. He will try and get himself into 11th place by the time they hit the brakes to Clairvaux. But it's Gallagher that leads, Lang in 2nd place, Parker is 3rd. I should remind you, Gallagher now is already 1.7 seconds ahead. That's just how much of a strong start he got and how much of an advantage he has in clear air. And what's not helping Parker, he now has Crawford to his right-hand side. And the run out of the chicane was a little bit compromised there, trying to defend from Crawford. And now here comes the cavalry behind him. He's got Arnell and Hooker and Maskell and Chiddicks all in that group together. They head down towards Tower Bend. Poor oh, there's contact behind. Off goes Arnell, off goes Hooker. They're both off into the barriers. They're going to run wide at Tower Bend. They're going to carry on go. There will be some damage to those two cars, but I think everyone just trying to close up there. That was started a little bit by the battle between Crawford and Parker, Chris. And because of that, the cars immediately behind all bunched up. And as a result of that, through really no one else's fault, just the two cars got together. It was the compression down towards Tower, and those two cars unfortunately came off worse in what was really an incident where there was pretty much everyone was a bit of an innocent party in that.
Yeah, exactly that, Scott. I'd read it exactly the same. Obviously, Andrew got onto the grass coming out of the chicane, out of turn 3 or 4, and that cost him momentum down, and obviously everyone wanting to then get by and caused a compression, and the car contact happened, and unfortunately Arnell and Hooker, it didn't look like big contact to me. It just happened to catch at exactly the wrong angle and speared them both off, so they will be both suffering a little bit from damage, and also they're now obviously dropped back, and we see that Arnell and Hooker, they're back in 12th and 13th, so really affected their race. Hopefully they can start making their way back up through. John Lang has maintained his 2nd position though, really again doing what he needs to do, which is defend. He hasn't necessarily got the ultimate pace of Gallagher, but now that Crawford has got him a little bit off his rear there, he might have some time to put in some consistent laps and at least get Gallagher looking back in his mirrors again.
The gap's come down to 1.4 seconds, so now I think the advantage of running in a bit of a pack seems to be working in the favour of the cars in 2nd, 3rd and 4th now, because the clear air only gets you so much of an advantage. But Gallagher now, who was as far as 1.9 seconds in front, had a bit of a ragged first couple of corners that lost him a couple of tenths. Now as Lang tries to bring Crawford and Parker with him, they might try and start to close back in, even though that gap, as I say that, is going to drop back out once more to 1.6 seconds. Hudson Knight, one of our younger drivers in the field, having a scrap with his dad, so battle between the two Knights here. Hudson in front of Jason, so son ahead of father at this point in time, and they're both chasing down Chris Blair at this point in time as they head down towards, and here comes Jason looking to the outside saying, "Elbows out, son, I'm coming through." And so not quite for Jason just yet, as Hudson tries to squeeze his way around the outside and hold on to the position.
I think we just caught the tail end of a little bit of contact into the hairpin last time out when we were going through there, but our focus was elsewhere. But I was interested to see whether they did come together. I'll speak to them afterwards to see whether there's any complaints there, but they're certainly having a good old battle between themselves. And we still see John Lang is definitely a cork in the bottle here, with Guy Crawford and Andrew Parker now caught right back up there and looking to try and make that, Richard's not completely out of it. Just one mistake probably is that gap. So he's still got to make sure he maintains all of his concentration through this race.
Well, that's crucial. Andy Parker with the fastest lap of the race. It's a 10th quicker than Gallagher's own fastest lap that that's just been duped. So watch out for that. But you're absolutely right. John Lang, as well as his efforts are here, absolutely is the cork in the bottle, because both Crawford and Parker have to try and get through, and John Lang just held really firm in that chicane. That compromised exit for Crawford is music to the ears of Andy Parker. He will get in the slipstream. He's going to look for 3rd place. We'll get a small tow from Lang in front. That will help him down the straight. Now under brakes, can he go around the outside? Crawford does go deep, and he holds on for the position. He parks the car right on the apex, denying Parker any chance to get that cutback to come down through the Jim Clark S's. But again, all that fighting, as we mentioned, the harder these two fight each other, the easier it is for Lang to try and make a break. But even then, he's not catching Gallagher. The gap is 2.6 seconds, and time, as we're coming to the second half, towards the second half of the race here, Chris, time is quickly running out in these short 50-minute races. And if Parker and Croft want to try and catch up to Gallagher, the move's got to be made now and not a moment later. It has to get done now.
It's certainly, we're down to that middle sort of distance of the race, so yeah, the meat of the passing has to happen. Just focusing in here very briefly on Ryan Hooker and Steve Arnell, who we saw having those issues earlier, but are still stuck together having a great battle, and they've been exchanging places as we see this little sort of midfield pack going on here, sort of going about their business, but the racing is just as hard and frantic in this mid-pack as it is out front.
Absolutely agree with that. Now then, just in front, was that second, third and fourth getting together? Because it was very close, and the gap is, what was it? It's now second, third and fourth all together. So it was about roughly, less than a tenth of a second. Crawford now with his best chance to get through, but Lang is being absolutely stubborn here to the inside line, and he's forcing Crawford to go the long way around, but he's been duped. He runs wide, he runs too deep into Clairvaux, and up the inside goes Crawford on the switchback, but still Andy Parker can't get through, as Lang manages to gather the car up quick enough trying to hold off in that position. Now they come through the S's together, and a good run there from Andy Parker puts him right in the slipstream. He darts out to the outside line. Now you can pass under brakes on the outside, but you have to be that little bit deeper, that little bit more committed as they come down towards the zone. They're touching wheels, and Lang tries to hold on to the position. Crawford still in second place, but then Parker does try to go around the outside line, and he tried to stick side by side with Lang on the exit, but it couldn't quite work. If he goes to the other side of the track, Lang shows on the edge of the road. You want to go around me? Go around the long way round, sunshine. And Parker's trying every trick in the book that he knows to try and get through. But this is the crucial thing. Now that Crawford's been released, what kind of pace does he have, if any at all, to try and close in on Gallagher's 3.5 second advantage that he has as we begin the second half of the race? Yeah,
we'll keep an eye on that gap. I think John Lang has used up all of his classical physics to try and keep on the track and ahead, and now is dipping into quantum mechanics, and somehow he's still got his car ahead of Andrew there. But Andrew's got up the inside of the complex, but it doesn't give him the inside to the right-hander. So again, he's being frustrated at every single turn by really good car positioning, and again into this tight. He's racing like a real experienced driver. It's the kind of thing we see Christian Chiruta do. So he's blocking off the apexes, making sure that even if he gives up the inside of one corner, he's got the outside line into the next one. So he's really doing a good job of frustrating Andrew here, and Andrew's doing a good job so far as to not actually make contact. He's going for a move up the inside, late braking, but into turn one it's really difficult to get that move done unless it's done a little bit further up from a mistake coming out of the final turn.
And yeah, full credit to John Lang, because he's absolutely not doing anything wrong here. He's simply just putting his car in all the right places in all the right times and making it the widest Caterham in the venue. So he's essentially is the definition of forcing Parker to try and go the long way around, which is round the outside. He's going to have a look now down towards the complex tower, once again under brakes. But again, Lang parks the car. Look at that, that's clever. He has the inside line, then parks the car straight on the apex as soon as he gets it, to deny Parker any chance to get that switchback and a better run off the corner. This is very smart, very forward-thinking defensive driving from John Lang. He tries to hold off Andy Parker to continue to frustrate him here as we get into the last 5.5 minutes. He has to try and find a way through, Andy. Otherwise, he will be off the podium again for the second time in succession tonight as they turn back in through sunny in and sunny out. And just nibble his way past, but still Lang is just holding firm, and he really needs the cork in the bottle at this point in time. There's Freddie Chiddix in fifth. Ben Maskell's having a strong race in sixth. I've always forgotten about him a little bit, but he's in sixth position. And Tom McEwen, we almost definitely forgot about. He started towards the back. He's now into 7th place already. He's ahead of Jamie Peters-Ennis, who himself has had another one of those races where he's been rather quiet, but he's very slowly and surely snuck his way up into the top 10. Ahead of Ferdinand and Curtis, he's working on. There's Keith Dalton, who we see is fresh from racing a Mazda this past weekend at Cadwell Park for the first time. Across the line goes the battle of third, and still in the slipstream is Andy Parker. And even though he's close at this point in time, Chris, he just doesn't. He gets close to the slipstream, but even that's not enough. He needs car position, and he needs momentum off the corners in order to try and get past. While he might have the speed in terms of the slipstream, the other two elements are currently missing at this point in time, and he needs to try and get it as quick as he can. Otherwise, it's not only bye-bye Gallagher, but it's bye-bye Crawford as well. Yeah, I think at this point he's just now looking to get that position. And again, we see Lang just defending that inside line, doing such a fantastic job. I can't tell you how difficult it is to keep that sustained defence going for a whole race. And so far he's done it through like 11 minutes of this race. And say it's so difficult not to make that little mistake, which Andrew is trying ever so hard to give. He's going around the outside going into that chicane, but again he's not quite alongside, therefore he has to give way and let John take his racing line. So yeah, really difficult, but both cars doing, giving us a great race here. And I wonder just how much closer Freddie Chiddick might be able to get. He's 2 seconds away from this scrap that's going on. There is Freddie in 5th position. It's just a reminder that he's currently the championship leader in his respective group in the real-life Caterham Academy, so proving he's quite prominent in the sim as well as in a real Caterham. There's the rest of the pack going through. That was about sort of 8th down to 13th, and they're side-by-side again for 3rd position. Lang, again, putting that car in all the right places. Again, you see Parker going to the outside line. Lang defends on the inside. Now he's looking for that switchback, but look, perfectly placed. Lang parked that car straight on the apex. No chance for Parker to get through, and again says, right, he's going to try and get past this time. Down the pit straight once again, and once more, he has to make that move now. He pulls himself alongside earlier, but out of the toe, loses that advantage having a draft. He heads into Clairvaux, and once again, Lang parks the car straight where it needs to be. And he's and just denying Parker any chance to get through. Genuinely, this is one of the best defensive drivers I've seen all season, at least in the last few seasons. Not just for some of the front runners, but John Lang has learnt an awful lot. And he probably has to defend from there as he runs wide on the exit. And now I spoke too soon because finally Andy Parker does get through. And that, I think, in many cases, when it was superb defensive driving, and Lang will come back at him. It was consistent pressure all the way through from Parker that finally saw him manage to get through. And now his own tactics have been used against him. Parks the car on the apex and he's through. That was smart defensive driving all through that period for John, but a smart setup for Andy there to finally make him crack under pressure, especially exiting the S's.
Yeah, he now has to really concentrate, switch mode from attack to real concentration about trying to go forward. But John Lang is having none of it. He's looking to immediately go back up the inside, but hasn't made that stick, and he's had to outbrake himself. A little bit of a lock up there. Didn't lose him too much time, actually. I was expecting him to have dropped back a little bit further. But Andrew certainly has some extra speed over John, so he'll be looking to use that extra speed in the next couple of corners and hopefully be able to break back. But whether with just 2 minutes to go, that's 1 and maybe 2 laps to go, they're going to have, it's probably not enough for him to do anything other than consolidate that 3rd place.
Keep an eye on Freddie Chiddick, though, in that black car with the red roll cage. He is substantially closing that gap down. There he is in 5th position. It could turn out to be 4th by the time we end this. We're going to head on to the final lap of the race now. I think we are, anyway, because
I think we'll have another one, Scott, because Richard Gallagher went across the line several seconds ahead, didn't he?
Excellent. So we get 2 laps to go then. So 2 more chances for John Lang to try and retaliate at Andy Parker. But look, you can see how much quicker Andy is. That immediately after being released there, it must be a breath of fresh air for him. Like, finally I've got through. But of course he knows the damage has been done because Gallagher is some 4 seconds ahead of Crawford, and then Crawford's a further 3.5 ahead of Parker. So 7 seconds to the lead has been lost just by trying to get past John Lang in that entire sequence of laps that he's lost out on. So he will try and hold on as best he can to maintain that 4th place. But Chiddick himself might come under threat from the charging Tom McEwing because he's got past Ben Maskell. He's now up to 6th position. 5th place is potentially on the cards. So with a lap and a half to go here, Chris, there's a real chance possibly that Freddie Chiddick could even be denied for what could be a perfect finishing touch. What's been a brilliant recovery drive from the back of the grid for Tom after his mishaps in race 1.
He must have had some absolutely great overtakes to get. He had that spectacular first lap. We made absolutely every opportunity. I am going to keep an eye on Richard Gallagher just in case it does take him slightly longer than 22 seconds to cross the line. I don't hope I didn't misspeak, but certainly some real amazing fight backs from Tom McEwing to see him come up. And Chiddick's in real life, he's been ultra consistent in real life, and it looks like that's carried on through to this. It's going to be overly close to coming to this line. Is this going to be a winner, or is this going to one more lap? Got one more lap.
It's one more lap, but only just. He got across. Must have been with less than a second to go across the line. So one more time around, one more chance for McEwing, thankfully, to try and get past it right now. Oh, Chiddick has dropped down to 8th. Chiddick is down to 8th, so that either there was contact or a mistake for Chiddick, but he's now dropped behind McEwing, Maskell, Peter Dennis, Vernerhuff, and now Ryan Hooker, and he's now down to 10th. So what could be the top 5, he might get a free pass here if he can squeeze past. That is
Vernerhuff,
which he does get through. Hooker's next, and he gets sideways, connected to the back of Ryan Hooker's car. And it really hasn't been a great night for Freddie, has it? He had a decent result in race 1, but unfortunately, Freddie's had that position thrown away. He's now down to 13th place and way out of the points and a chance of getting a strong score. There's Guy Crawford in 2nd place on his own in no man's land, as is also Richard Gallagher, we just saw flash through the shot. And Andy Parker is 3 seconds behind, but he's too far back, having been stuck behind John Lang all that time. And Lang, meanwhile, of course, has now got a bit of redemption, given the fact that he's now not under immediate pressure from Freddie Chiddick, but despite Tom McEwing's strong drive, I think not even he can get that close in the final few corners.
Yeah, it's all spread out in these last couple of seconds, hasn't it? We've actually got quite a procession going on now, but what a great result for Richard Gallagher tonight.
And he heads up through the complex for the final time, and before this one tonight, he hadn't even really won a proper race, but as AJ said when he won his second world title, the first time was so nice, he had to do it twice. It's 2 from 2 for Richard Gallagher. While the front runners are away, the contenders will play, and it's going to be Richard Gallagher who does take a double here at Croft. His first 2 main race caterhamracer.com victories. Crawford second, Andy Parker does get something to salvage his evening with third. Fourth for John Lang after a brilliant defensive effort through a majority of that race. It's the McEwing fifth from the back of the grid. That's one of the drivers of the evening. Maskell sixth. JP Zennis has got to be relatively happy with 7th place in the top 10. Pretty much drama free for him tonight. Then it's Hooker, then Larby in 9th position. A great run from Matthew Larby, who gets himself into the top 10 on his first evening in the server. Really good stuff from him in the main race. Paul Fernhoff rounds out the top 10. Arnell is 11th from Curtis. Chiddick's down in 13th after his mishap in the closing stages. And Jason does beat Hudson. So in the Battle of the Knights, it's father who beats son. Jason ahead of Hudson there, 14th and 15th respectively. The rest of the field comes through towards the end. We lost Michael Coomber towards the end there as he DNF'd. So another fast and frantic evening, Chris, between our front runners in caterhamracer.com. And as I mentioned, whilst those main contenders are away, it does give a chance for some other drivers to get their own little time in the spotlight. And Richard Gallagher certainly did that. Let's quickly run you through the results before we have a quick discussion about that second race. So Gallagher then takes the victory by 4.3 seconds. It's Guy Crawford in second place, and Andy Parker, who had to stare at the back of Jim Lang's catering for so long, does finally get through and takes the final podium spot. John Lang, though, one of the best defensive drivers of the season already for that 4th position. Tom McEwing from the back to 5th. That's very impressive for him, and that possibly bodes well for some of his exploits in next year's academy. Ben Maskell picks up 6th. JP Zennis should be happy with 7th. And then it's Ryan Hooker, Matthew Larby, and Paul Fernhoff who round out the top 10. 11th place for Steve Arnell, 12th for Alan Curtis. Freddie Chiddick picks up 13th, but it could have been more for him, as high as 5th if he hadn't made that mistake in the final couple of laps. Jason Knight beats Hudson, his father beats son to 14th and 15th place. It's Chris Burr from Neil Pardo, then Anthony Hamilton, Adam Whitehouse, and Graham Hopkins round out the top 20. Then we lost Keith Dalton, and Michael Coomber also retired as well. We didn't get Faris Babsell at the start of that race, and sadly, neither did Jim Ertham or Paul Donkin, who were on the entry list but did not take the start of either race at what could have been a 25-car grid. So, 2 wins for Richard Gallagher then, Chris, and 2 very well-deserved wins, but it was a tale of 2 different fortunes, different race types, where the first race was pretty much Gallagher having to try and find his way and claw his way past Parker as best as he could, and then just about holding off the late advances of Parker when he tried to come back. In that second race, though, from pole position, charged out in front in that first lap, was up by, 1.2 seconds in there, and from there, pretty much never looked like being challenged, even as the likes of Crawford and Parker tried to catch him up in clear air.
Yeah, some really, really consistent driving from Gallagher there. So, like you said, in race 1, he bided his time and he was waiting, patient, and he used the speed of Parker to break themselves away. And as soon as they had that little gap, he made full use of it and found his way through. And Andrew, like I say, trying to keep up with him or maybe make a move back for the lead out that final corner obviously cost himself some time. But it led to Guy Crawford taking a couple of second places. So again, an incredibly consistent driving night from Guy, and well done on that, certainly maximising his points. And then Andrew, nice to see him getting that podium back after what was an epic battle. It's brilliant to see them both, him and John Lang, nose to tail for nearly the entirety of that race. And as I said earlier, that's so difficult to do. Tom McEwing, brilliant movement through the field to get his 5th place then. And yeah, Maskell, what a great result. And Peter Zennis, another consistent move there into the top 10. So some really good racing by all involved, and again, fabulous to be here watching.
Should we go and have a chat with them? Because I think there should be some interesting stories from tonight's race, in particular from our double race winner, and for some of those who he's battling amongst on the podium and a bit further back. So once again, it's time for you to don your Mark and Brundle style hat and have a wander down the virtual pit lane and see you can find. And I'm sure there'll be one or two drivers who'll be very satisfied with the results. Others maybe thinking what might have been, but let's see who we can find and see who you want to start off with.
Let's see if we've got John Lang to start. We'll go backwards through the podiums. John, have you got us in the commentary box?
Of Good evening, guys. Yeah.
Hey, congratulations, John, on your third place to start with, but equally in that second race. What an epic battle! Whilst you may have lost out on your podium position, it was an incredible feat by you to hold Andrew back for that long.
Yeah, that was amazing fun. I think the podium first race was somewhat lucky. Somebody clattered the tyre barriers, and I think it might have been Tom. And so I inherited that, but then similarly I didn't clatter them, so that's that's fair enough. And then the battle in the last race, it was I don't know how many laps we did, probably 8 laps or so, and that was so hard. Smallest mistake and it can go. So and I think everybody would say he's definitely a faster racer than me. So to hold him back for that long, you'll have to ask him if he was just toying with me or not. But
it didn't look like it from where we were sat. It looked like he was trying his absolute hardest. So
I didn't look like it in my mirrors either. So it was amazing fun. It was really good.
Yeah, the car positioning absolutely stellar, and say congratulations on that podium, and even more congratulations for that 4th place. But actually, for what it was, that was brilliant. Thank you very much.
Can I just have a quick shout out to the Merton Cycle Paths, my dad's little cycling group. They all jump on and watch a few races every now and then. So thanks for them joining in and watching.
You have just done so. Well done.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.
Cheers, guys.
Hey, that's great. And let's get in Andrew as well. Andrew, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hey, Cheesy. How's it going? Hey, Scott.
You must be fairly tired after that one. I imagine a little bit of frustration, but equally, from where we were sat, it was an incredible race too that we watched, and to finally get that podium must be satisfying, if not a little bit frustrating, that you'd obviously seen your racing competitors from the first race disappear off up the road.
Yeah. I think when you drive cars as powerful as this, it's quite easy to lose it, as I did in the first race. Not that you'd understand that, Cheesy, I'm afraid.
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, having said that, I know in real life, everyone says the Academy cars are obviously, they're the slowest of the Caterhams, but they are faster than most machinery out there. So they certainly are able to spin up, and as you proved very nicely in that first race.
I think it's a foot weight to power ratio that was the problem.
Exactly that.
But yeah, the second race was great. John and I had a real good ding dong. There was a few sort of tit for tat going around the last section, which was really cool, trying to posture and gesture and try and throw each other off. It was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're adding some realism to this commentary by having your fan give us the wind noises as we do. We know everything gets overheated, but I guess from your perspective, a little bit disappointed that you've let some of these positions slide away. But again, back for some more next time out.
Yeah, it's always good fun, even if you're a little bit rubbish.
We will see you next time when you've
Cheers,
recovered yourself. Well done.
Thank you very much. Good night.
And let's get in. Let's get Guy in. Guy, have you got us in the commentary box? Calling Guy. Are you there, Guy?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, yes, can now. We've got you.
We're back.
Yep, we're back. What a sort of set of great results. Not necessarily expected in that first race either. A bit of a last lap gift.
Yes. Thank you, Andrew, for that. That was I assume it was Andrew. I haven't got the skins on, so a lot of yellow cars. But that was very kind of him to do a 360 in front of me. But yeah, first time I've ever driven on this track in real life, or in the sim, or indeed real life. So yeah, I was pleased with that.
Yeah,
good.
And it's always open to, there's confusion always at the last corners. It's always so tempting to shove a car up the inside. So I think everyone actually did themselves proud tonight by not having too many incidents going on. But a couple of second places, and I guess that is maximising whilst the leaders are A.
The better drivers aren't driving, is that what you're trying to say?
I didn't say that. I said maximising results. But yeah, I mean, it's always nice to maximise.
I said it for you, Chris. No, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, totally. No, very, very pleased to get around without too much incident and, claw a few points back. So that was good. I was pleased with that.
Yeah, well done tonight, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks, then. See ya.
And then let's see, Richard. I don't think we've had Richard in the commentary box. So, Richard, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hello, guys.
I said earlier, I think that was your first race win, but I hope I'm not misspeaking with that. Is that right?
No, you're absolutely right, mate. I think I had one in a friendly when I first started racing with you guys, but that's the first one that count. Well, the first two that count.
I was going to say, you followed up your first one immediately with a second, so what a consistent night racing. In that first race, you were extremely patient there, waiting for your opportunity, and as soon as that opportunity showed, you took it.
I had a bit of a chat with Andrew before and said, no favours, but bit of respect, and then we'll go for it when there's a few laps left to go. So I was a bit worried at one point when I think it was John was catching me up, or Tom queuing, I'm not quite sure, but someone was reeling us in a little bit, and I was just trying to give Andrew some confidence that I wasn't going to take a lunge, just try and pull that gap out a little bit. But it was great. I'm not quite sure what happened to Andrew at the end. But
heavy foot, it looked like he was desperate to get back through. Obviously, you can imagine to try and take the win back again, but unfortunately just spun out at the end there, a bit of wheel spin. But then in second race, you kind of benefited from a little bit of John Lang being a cork in the bottle, but nevertheless you maximised that and just disappeared off down the road.
John was looking like a bit of a threat in qualifying as well, actually. So I was kind of glad to have a bit of a buffer. I feel bad for Andrew. He didn't really put a foot wrong in practice in qualifying, and just a tiny mistake in race one, which he was very fair with me on. So second one, I was enjoying it so much. I think there was a second left to go. I could have backed it up and not done that last lap, but I was having too much fun to stop.
Brilliant stuff. You've been competing, at the front from the very first race, but obviously you've had a few incidents that have cost you some time, so it must be just such a nice feeling now to just tie it all together, especially with the double.
Absolutely delighted, and I wish Christian a very lovely holiday, and don't hurry back, sir.
Very good. Thanks very much, Rich. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
There you go. Good stuff. Some happy podiums there.
Sounded though for the most part everyone was relatively satisfied with what they came away with. But I guess as an overall analysis, I mean, let's regardless of the top three not being here in the championship, tonight was a night where we got to see some other drivers come to the fore, have their moment, and kind of make stars of themselves in this particular meeting. Even if it is just for one meeting before the big boys come back in the top three, this will be a key evening where those drivers who are 4th, 5th, 6th in the championship will have gained points that will certainly try to thrust them into contention. Drop scores or not, they'll want to try and use this tonight to their full advantage. It means they can go into Snetterton and Cadwell Park with a proper chance of getting them right amongst it, possibly making themselves a bit of a nuisance going through those last 4 races of the season.
Well, that's interesting for you to say, because I think they've been a nuisance for most of the season anyway, as in they've been there or thereabouts and pushing. And whilst we do occasionally see Christian and Dave pull away towards the end of the races, certainly at the beginning they're instrumental in what happens in those races. And maybe this will give them that extra tiny bit of confidence they need just to go and stick it to them. I mean, they lasted their whole 2 races there without any major incident, and it's it's really good to see. And we're spoilt really on caterhamracer.com with. There are some really, there's strength in depth, and we saw that through this whole field of 25, 26 odd drivers tonight that just showed that the battles were there all the way down the field. And I know some people have come away with a bit of contact here and there and maybe a bit of frustration, but overall the racing here is excellent, and I like to congratulate them all on that.
Absolutely. Can't help but echo that. And let's just quickly remind ourselves, looking ahead as to what's coming up then. So 2 more meetings left then, and which is Snetterton at the end of next month. And then, of course, we've got Cadwell Park just a couple of weeks after that to round off the season. 2 very different circuits. Of course, this has been it's very much a mostly high-speed circuit. Snetterton's a circuit that has lots of long straights, but equally as many tight and twisty technical sections in the middle. Then you have Cadwell Park, which is all tight and twisty sections and narrow roads. So 2 very different circuits to what we've had tonight, particularly in terms of some having very similar qualities compared to others. But how do we think that these guys are going to tackle it, particularly knowing that Christian, David, and Steve are all ready to come back? But they're going to come back with a lot of drivers now with a lot more hunger in them coming to these last 4 races, and therefore, whilst they really have to watch their tail behind, they're probably looking over their shoulder every few seconds in these next 4 races to make sure that none of them really put any kind of possible compromise into what could be a title shot for them. They're going to have to really get their elbows up, because they know these guys will have stepped up a level using tonight as a benchmark to try and improve themselves. and they're going to have to hope that those guys' momentum start to fade a bit even before the Snetterton, if they don't manage to carry it through into these last 4 races. This could be a very intriguing quartet of encounters that are coming up in the next few weeks.
There's still 4 races to go. There's still 2 events, 2 at each event. So there's 4 races to go, and we've seen that anyone who's away tonight, they are losing their sort of barriers of drop scores. So they haven't got any sort of margin for error, and the others that have been racing tonight do, because they've been racing all the rounds. And Snetterton 300, even in the sim world, whilst the tow is only sort of half a second behind in the sim world, whereas when we go there for real, it's certainly a lot more powerful. We still see the straight is long enough that we see sort of double overtakes. So you might see one person getting past another, and then the straight is long enough that they can get back past again with a bit of the slipstream and a bit of a sort of ambitious move into the Brundle and Senna S's at the end. So it's great opportunities, and they're, like you say, they're both different characters, but both are really good overtaking tracks, and therefore we will see some interest. And Cadwell Park especially is, again, in real life and in the sim world, is a fantastic challenge. It's a really amazing gradient, and in the 420R, as we're going to return back to the 420R for that last round, it's going to be exciting to see what these guys do.
And in terms of the 3 main championship contenders, David Rowe, Christian Zaruta, Steve McMaster, if at all, do you think any of them are going to have any kind of advantage on these circuits or any in these cars? Because, of course, it's 1 race in the Academy car left and then 1 race in the 420R. Are any of these 2 venues going to suit one driver or the other? Or are we really going to a case where in these last 4 races, we just don't know who's going to come out on top? Is it that unpredictable?
I think it is that unpredictable, Scott. I think overall the season we've seen, whilst David and Christian have been fighting at the lead most of the time, we've seen that variability on the lower steps of the podium, and yeah, it only takes 1 mistake to really sort of scramble it all up, and 1 missed event now, or even just a lower tail end of the top 10 finish, will potentially scupper a championship for anyone at the moment.
Well, there's the confirmation, of course, of where we're heading to. As we said, it's Snetterton on the 28th of September, then Cadwell Park on the 12th of August. And, of course, hopefully you guys will be able to join us for those last 2 meetings. Of course, in the real world, if you want to catch up with all the Caterham Motorsport action for real, of course, we'll be back racing here at Croft for real this weekend. Chris isn't racing until next weekend at Alton Park, but for the rest of the 4 championships, the 2 Academy squads in green and white group, as well as the Road Sports, 270s and 310s, they're all going to be out in force for their next rounds of the 2021 season. Of course, Chris, yours comes up in a week and a bit's time at Alton Park on the British GT package. How are you feeling ahead of heading to one of the arguably one of the best circuits in the country in terms of natural undulations and how fast it is? Are you looking forward to that? Yeah,
Alton Park's a great track. You go on a proper little journey when you do a lap round Alton Park, and it's again full of gradient, and it's really characterful corners, and it's going to be exciting with the slicks on the new 7 Series car that really carry some speed around some of those corners. And it's also not shy of throwing up a few weather issues, so who knows whether we'll have some weather thrown in for the mix. But if you're there for the British GT rounds, then great to see. Anyone wants to come say hello, then they're welcome.
I'll just finally, very, very quickly, thoughts for this weekend? Who do you think is going to be the main contenders? Obviously, there were championship battles still going on, but anyone that you're expecting to possibly pop out and maybe make some charges this weekend?
Well, just to call out, Freddie Chiddix has had some absolutely brilliant racing in his his academy season this year, and he's looking ultra consistent, as I was saying just before he spun off tonight. But yeah, I mean, anyone who sort of races on our service, I always like to follow along with what they're up to, and so I'll be interested to see how everyone gets along. But special thought towards Freddie, and good luck, potentially able to clinch the championship soon, I think.
Well, we'll wait and see how it plays out. Of course, we've still got a few more rounds to go, particularly with Croft and then Snetterton and Cadwell Park still to come up, and it really is all to play for in the mix as well. So once again, thank you, Chris. Thank you to everyone who's been racing with us tonight. And thank you for those who've been watching, both not just live, but also back on the broadcast. We appreciate anyone who watches, whether it is as it happens or if you're watching back in the after live broadcast recording. And for those of you who are looking forward to the next few rounds, then be sure to join us next time. We'll be heading off virtually to Snetterton. And of course, if you want to tune into all the action that's happening for real, you can head to either the Caterham Cars or BRSEC Facebook and YouTube pages, where all the action from Caterhams will be happening this weekend from both of the Academy Championship groups, as well as the Road Sport 270 and 310R Championships as well. Don't miss it. It should be some more typically exciting Caterham racing for all involved. Just final time for us to say a big thank you to our sponsors, of course, because the caterhamracer.com Season 5 Championship is, of course, sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7, by Design and Display Structures, immerse yourself in worlds beyond with bespoke projection screens, and by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, with additional association and support from Darren, Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Do go and check all of them out. There are some brilliant supporters, and we thank them immensely for all of their support and goodwill in helping us out here with this championship. Once again, from myself, Scott Woodwiss, Chris Hutchinson, and all of us here at caterhamracer.com, thank you for watching. The championship battle rumbles on. This testing comes up next in a few weeks. Can any of the top three who will return for sure try and hold off the charging cars behind them after Richard Gallagher and co were able to take the limelight tonight whilst the front three were away? How's it going to play out? Join us next time. But until then, take care. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.